Honeybees have to have food, right? We know honeybees make honey. They collect nectar from flowers. They bring it back to their hives. They convert that nectar to honey, and honey is their fuel. It's the energy they need to be able to move, to be able to carry on the task that they have to do in their colonies. So, nectar is most available, at least in temperate climates, usually somewhere from late March to early June. And again, you might go slightly one way or the other, depending on if you're north or south or east or west. But that incoming nectar is a vital resource for bees. Honeybees don't store honey for me and you. They store honey so that they can survive the coming winter. They store honey because there are plenty of times of the year that there aren't a lot of nectar producing plants cranking out the nectar. So they store honey so they can have that energy resource when it's not readily available in the environment. So we as beekeepers then harvest that honey, and when we harvest that honey, we have taken from them the resources that they need to survive the coming winter. So, with that background in mind, I often get asked, do I feed bees post harvest? In other words, after I take off my honey, do I feed bees? Well, let me tell you my strategy for feeding bees. I feed bees when they need it. It's not based on timing, it's based on need. So let me tell you, for example, my strategy. In my opinion, honey production is all about beekeeping strategies to make colonies stronger than they otherwise would be in the wild. Remember, bees want to swarm. We're trying to stop that. So we're making them stronger than they otherwise would be in the wild. And as a result, they store more honey than they otherwise need to survive winter. So in my typical colony setup, I'll have a deep brood box, I'll have a medium honey super, and that medium honey super is theirs no matter what. Even if it has the most pristine, most beautiful honey and all the hive in that super, I leave that super on exclusively for the bees. So everything I make above that super is mine for harvest and for sale. So if I take off that for harvest, I still have that super on that's enough for them to survive. So, do I feed post harvest? No, I don't. I don't have to because I've left a super on for them. So, when do I feed? Well, I feed if that super ever is half or less full. Generally speaking, throughout my summer and my early fall, there's enough nectar coming in that the bees are able to keep that super full, right? As much honey as they're taking out to use, they're able to put enough nectar back to keep it full. But if there's ever a significant dearth or a drought or a dry period, it's hot, etc., and bees start eating into their reserves, by the time August or September rolls around, I'm critically paying attention to the amount of food in that super. If that food gets below a critical level, then I start feeding. And that rarely happens for me post harvest. Now, that's if I simply want to maintain my colonies. Now, if I wanted to grow my colonies post harvest, perhaps I want to take off my honey, sell it, but then I want to grow my colony so that I can split it, maybe split it multiple times and sell bees. Then I will consider feeding them with that feeding to grow them for split purposes. But it would never necessarily be for maintenance purposes because they already have the food necessary for them. So, what I usually do when determining whether or not my bees need food is I'll go to the back of my hive, I'll grab the handle behind the hive at the lowermost box or lowest box, and I'll try to hoist that box up. If it's incredibly easy to rock forward, then I know I need to do a hive inspection to see if it needs food. If it's really difficult to get off the stand, then I know they likely have enough food and I should be okay. So I feed based on need, not based on timing. There are years that I don't feed at all because the flora resources were fine, the rain was great, there were no droughts, etc. But there are times of year I may have to feed a couple of times depending on the food resources. So I always make my food decisions or my sugar syrup or corn syrup decisions based on if the bees need it or not, not based on the time of year that I'm experiencing at the moment.